The first time Emma Williams saw Alexander Pierce, she was elbow-deep in cake batter and cursing at a broken mixer. The tiny Brooklyn bakery where she worked, aptly named Sugar and Spice, had been open since 5 a.m., and the morning rush had just subsided when the bell above the door chimed. She didn't look up immediately, still fighting with the ancient appliance that had chosen today of all days to die. "Excuse me," a deep voice cut through her frustration. "Is this establishment actually open, or is property destruction just a hobby of yours?" Emma blew a stray curl from her face and looked up, prepared to deliver a snarky retort. The words died in her throat. Standing before her was the most devastatingly handsome man she'd ever seen. Tall, with dark hair styled to perfection, piercing, blue eyes, and a bespoke suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent. But what caught her attention most was his expression, a mixture of amusement and impatience that made her blood boil. "We're open," she replied, wiping her flour-covered hands on her apron. "Though our mixer apparently decided to retire early. Can I help you?" Alexander Pierce was having the worst morning of his considerable business career. His company, Pierce Innovations, was in the middle of acquiring their biggest competitor, and his CFO had just called with news that could tank the entire deal. He needed caffeine, silence, and a place where no one knew who he was. He'd slipped away from his driver and security team, wandered several blocks from his Manhattan office, and somehow ended up crossing the bridge into Brooklyn. "Just coffee, black." His eyes scanned the small shop, taking in the mismatched furniture, hand-painted walls, and the distinct lack of anything resembling the sterile high-end cafes he frequented. "If that's within your capabilities." Emma narrowed her eyes. One black coffee for Prince Charming coming right up. She turned toward the coffee station, muttering, "Extra special ingredient included free of charge." Alexander's lips twitched. Most people didn't dare speak to him that way. As CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, he was accustomed to deference and fear. This flower-covered woman with wild curls and fire in her eyes was refreshing. "I heard that," he said, leaning against the counter. "And I'd advise against poisoning your customers. Bad for business." Emma set the coffee before him with exaggerated care. "That'll be $3.50, unless the concept of paying is beneath you." Alexander pulled out his wallet and placed a $100 bill on the counter. "Keep the change. Maybe put it toward a mixer from this century." Their fingers brushed as he took the coffee, and something electric passed between them. Emma jerked her hand back as though burned, while Alexander's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. "Thanks for the coffee," he said after taking a sip, his voice oddly softer. "It's actually quite good." "Don't sound so surprised," Emma replied, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach. "Some of us common folk have skills beyond counting our pocket change." Alexander found himself smiling. A genuine smile, not the calculated one he used in boardrooms. "I never caught your name." "That's because I never threw it," she shot back, then sighed. "It's Emma. Alexander Pierce." He extended his hand, but Emma gestured at her flour-covered fingers. "I'd shake, but..." She shrugged. His phone buzzed, and the spell was broken. Alexander checked the message, and his expression hardened back into the mask of the ruthless businessman. "Duty calls," he said, straightening his already perfect tie. "Thanks for the coffee, Emma. I may have to come back sometime." "We'll try to contain our excitement," she replied, but there was a hint of a smile playing at her lips. As Alexander left, his security team rushed to meet him on the sidewalk, drawing curious stares from passers-by. Through the window, Emma watched as he was whisked away in a sleek black car. "Who was that?" asked Mia, Emma's best friend and co-owner of the bakery, emerging from the back room. Emma stared at the $100 bill in her hand. Just some arrogant businessman who's clearly lost. But even as she said it, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Something that would change everything. Little did she know, as Alexander settled into the backseat of his car, he was already planning his return to the little Brooklyn bakery, and the fiery baker who didn't seem impressed by his wealth or status. For the first time in years, Pierce was intrigued. 3 days had passed since the encounter with the mysterious Alexander Pierce, and Emma had almost convinced herself she'd imagined the whole thing. Almost. "You've checked that window 12 times in the last hour," Mia remarked, arranging freshly baked croissants in the display case. "Either you're expecting the apocalypse or hoping Mr. Moneybags will return." "I'm monitoring the weather," Emma replied defensively, turning away from the window. "And I am definitely not waiting for that arrogant suit to grace us with his presence again." "Mm-hmm," Mia hummed knowingly. "That's why you've worn mascara every day this week, for the weather." Emma threw a dish towel at her friend, who dodged it with practiced ease. Before she could defend herself further, the door swung open. Both women turned, expecting the usual morning crowd of locals and commuters. Instead, Alexander Pierce stood in the doorway, looking even more impeccably dressed than before. This time, however, he wasn't alone. A striking blonde woman hung on his arm, her designer outfit and perfect makeup screaming old money and privilege. "See?" Alexander said to his companion. "I told you this place had character." The blonde looked around with thinly veiled disdain. Character is one word for it. Emma felt her cheeks burn. She busied herself with the espresso machine, which thankfully was functioning better than her heart at the moment. Why did she care that he'd brought someone? It wasn't like there was anything between them. "Good morning," Alexander called out, making his way to the counter. "I hope you remember me." "Vaguely," Emma lied, not meeting his eyes. "What can I get for you and your friend?" The blonde, Victoria Winters, daughter of Alexander's largest investor and his date for a charity gala that evening, stepped forward. "Do you have anything organic? Or at least low-carb?" Mia stepped in before Emma could say something regrettable. "We have several gluten-free options and a delicious avocado toast." While Victoria deliberated with exaggerated concern, Alexander leaned slightly toward Emma. "I see you've gotten a new mixer." He nodded toward the shiny appliance on the counter. "Yes, we had an unexpected donation," Emma replied, finally looking at him. "Some people just throw money at problems instead of solving them." Alexander's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Sometimes money is the solution. Sometimes it's just the beginning of one." Their gaze held a beat too long, and Victoria cleared her throat. "Darling, I think I'll just have a green tea. We don't want to be late for brunch with Daddy." Emma felt her stomach twist at the word darling. She turned to prepare their order, grateful for the momentary distraction. "Actually," Alexander said, "I need to discuss something with the owner. Business proposition." He turned to Victoria. "Why don't you take the car to Bergdorf's? I'll meet you at the restaurant." Victoria looked between them suspiciously before plastering on a smile. "Don't be too long." She air-kissed Alexander's cheek and departed in a cloud of expensive perfume. Once she'd gone, Alexander's posture relaxed noticeably. "Sorry about that. Victoria's father is an important investor, and these social obligations are unfortunately part of the job." "No explanation needed," Emma said, sliding his coffee across the counter. "Your personal life is none of my business." "It's not personal," Alexander insisted. "It's strictly business." Mia tactfully retreated to the kitchen, leaving them alone in the front of the shop. "So," Emma raised an eyebrow. "This business proposition?" Alexander took a sip of his coffee. "I actually do have one. My company is hosting a charity gala next month. High-profile event, lots of wealthy donors. Our usual caterer just backed out. And we need someone who can provide unique, memorable desserts." Emma stared at him. "And you thought of us? A tiny Brooklyn bakery?" "I thought of you," he corrected, his blue eyes intense. "Your coffee is exceptional. I'd wager your baking is too. Emma hesitated. The opportunity would be incredible for their small business, but something felt off. Why would you risk your fancy event on someone you met once? Alexander's professional mask slipped for a moment. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about your coffee. He cleared his throat. And because sometimes taking risks pays off. Isn't that what entrepreneurship is about? Emma studied him, trying to read between the lines. This is strictly professional, then? Of course, Alexander replied, perhaps too quickly. Though I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to working with you personally. The bell above the door chimed as customers began filing in for the morning rush. Alexander glanced at his watch and grimaced. I've gotta run. Here's my card. My personal number is on the back. Call me if you're interested. The job pays well, I assure you. Emma took the embossed business card, her fingers brushing his again. That same electric current passed between them. I'll think about it, she promised. Alexander nodded, then hesitated before leaving. For what it's worth, Victoria isn't... You don't owe me explanations, Emma interrupted. Like you said, it's business. He studied her face for a moment longer, then nodded and departed, through the window. Emma watched as he slid into the back of a waiting car, immediately pulling out his phone and assuming the demeanor of the powerful CEO once more. Mia reappeared at her side. So, are we catering a billionaire's party or what? Emma looked down, at the business card in her hand, tracing the embossed letters with her finger. It would be good for the business, she reasoned. Mia grinned. The business. That's definitely why your cheeks are all flushed. That night, after hours of debating with herself, Emma picked up her phone and typed a message to the number on the back of Alexander's card. Sugar and Spice is interested in your proposal. When can we discuss details? Across town, in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Alexander's phone buzzed. Seeing Emma's message, he smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face, before typing his reply. Tomorrow? Lunch? I'll come to you. As Emma read his response, she told herself this was purely professional, but the flutter in her chest suggested otherwise. The lunch meeting had turned into dinner, and then coffee. And now, 2 weeks later, Emma found herself in Alexander's private office on the 87th floor of the Pierce Innovations Tower, surrounded by sample menus and sketches of elaborate desserts. I still think the champagne truffles should be the signature. Peace, Alexander said, loosening his tie as he leaned back in his leather chair. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered like a jewelry box of lights. And I still think you have no idea what you're talking about, Emma replied, though her tone was teasing rather than sharp. These past weeks had revealed a different side to Alexander Pierce, one that was passionate, thoughtful, and surprisingly down-to-earth when away from prying eyes. Ouch, he clutched his chest dramatically. Remind me why I hired you again? Emma gathered her sketches. Because I'm the best, and you know it. He smiled, that genuine smile that transformed his face and made her heart skip. Yes, you are. The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken feelings. Emma was the first to break eye contact, suddenly very interested in her pastry designs. It's getting late, she said, glancing at her watch. I should head back to Brooklyn. Alexander rose from his chair. I'll have my driver take you home. That's not necessary, Emma protested. I can take the subway. At this hour? Absolutely not. His voice left no room for argument. Besides, I need to make sure my star baker gets home safely. The success of my event depends on it. Right, Emma nodded. Business interests. Something flickered in Alexander's eyes. Emma. The intercom on his desk buzzed, interrupting whatever he'd been about to say. Mr. Pierce, Ms. Winters is here to see you. Alexander's expression darkened momentarily before he composed himself. "Tell her I'll be right out." He turned back to Emma with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry about this." "No problem," Emma said, gathering her things with hurried movements. "We're done here anyway." As they stepped into the reception area, Victoria Winters waited, looking stunning in an evening gown. Her smile faltered at the sight of Emma. "Alex, darling, we're going to be late for the opera," Victoria said, her eyes taking in Emma's casual attire with a dismissive glance. "Victoria, you remember Emma Williams? She's catering the charity gala," Alexander said, his voice returning to the cool, professional tone Emma had come to recognize as his public persona. "Of course," Victoria smiled thinly. "The baker." She turned to Alexander, placing a possessive hand on his arm. "The car is waiting, and you know how Mother hates tardiness." Emma stepped back, suddenly feeling out of place in this world of operas and private cars. "I should go. We can finalize the menu tomorrow." "James will drive you home," Alexander insisted, nodding to his chauffeur who stood nearby. "And Emma, thank you for staying late." As Emma rode in the luxury car back to her modest Brooklyn apartment, she questioned what she was doing. These planning sessions had become longer, more frequent, and increasingly personal. Last night, they'd spent hours talking about their childhoods, Alexander's privileged but lonely upbringing in boarding schools, and Emma's warm but financially challenging life with her single mother. She was falling for him. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Worse, she suspected he might feel something too. But there was Victoria, and a dozen society women like her, who fit naturally into Alexander's world in ways Emma never could. Meanwhile, in the back of another luxury car, Alexander sat in silence beside Victoria as she chatted about people he barely knew. His mind was back in his office with Emma, wondering what he'd been about to say before they were interrupted. "You're not listening to a word I'm saying," Victoria accused, breaking into his thoughts. "I'm sorry," he apologized automatically. "Work stress." Victoria studied him. "It's that baker, isn't it? Don't think I haven't noticed how much time you're spending on this charity event. Far more than necessary." "Emma is a professional I've hired to do a job," Alexander replied, his voice measured. "That's all." "Please, Alexander, I've known you since prep school. You've never looked at any of your professionals the way you look at her." He didn't respond, which was answer enough for Victoria. "You can't be serious," she scoffed. "She's from Brooklyn, for God's sake. What would the board say? What would your father have said?" At the mention of his father, Alexander's jaw tightened. "My father's been dead for 5 years, and I stopped caring about his approval long before that." "Well, you should care about the board's approval," Victoria pressed. "The Pierce name means something. You have responsibilities, obligations, a public image to maintain." She wasn't entirely wrong. Pierce Innovations was conservative at its core, despite its cutting-edge technology. The old money investors who had backed his father expected a certain lifestyle from the company's leadership. "I know my responsibilities," Alexander said firmly, ending the conversation. But as he stared out at the passing city lights, he wondered, was Emma Williams worth risking everything he'd built? The next day, Emma arrived at Pierce Tower for what was supposed to be their final planning meeting before the gala. Instead of Alexander, his executive assistant met her in the lobby. "Mr. Pierce apologizes, but he had to fly to Tokyo for an emergency board meeting," the young woman explained, handing Emma a folder. "He left the signed contract and final approval for all your designs. Your first payment has already been transferred." Emma took the folder, trying to hide her disappointment. "I see. Did he say when he'd be back?" "Not for 2 weeks, I'm afraid. Right before the gala. 2 weeks. No call, no text. Just business documents and a wire transfer." Maybe Victoria's words had struck home. Maybe this was Alexander's way of creating distance. Emma squared her shoulders. Please tell Mr. Pierce that everything will be ready for the gala. Sugar and Spice doesn't disappoint its clients. As she rode the elevator down, Emma reminded herself that this was for the best. They came from different worlds. Their connection had been a temporary illusion, a business relationship that had strayed into dangerous territory. What she didn't know was that Alexander had spent the entire 13-hour flight to Tokyo staring at her number on his phone, composing and deleting messages, or that he'd asked his assistant to deliver a personal note that had somehow gone missing from the folder. A note that read, "Emma, nothing about this is just business anymore. We need to talk when I return. Alexander." The night of the charity gala arrived with the breathless anticipation of a coming storm. Emma had spent the past 2 weeks pouring herself into creating the most spectacular dessert display of her career. If this was to be her final interaction with Alexander Pierce, she would leave him with something unforgettable. The grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Museum of Art had been transformed into a wonderland of twinkling lights and exotic flowers. Billionaires, celebrities, and politicians mingled beneath the soaring ceiling, their jewelry catching the light like constellations. In the kitchen, Emma directed her hastily assembled team with military precision. Sugar sculptures resembling delicate ice formations adorned chocolate landscapes. Champagne truffles, which she had ultimately included despite her protests, were arranged in spiraling towers. Each dessert told a story. Her silent conversation with a man who had disappeared from her life as suddenly as he had entered it. "Ms. Williams?" a voice interrupted her work. "Mr. Pierce would like to see you." Emma's heart stuttered. She checked her reflection in a stainless steel refrigerator door. White chef's coat, hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup that had probably melted in the kitchen heat. "Now isn't a good time," she replied, steadying her voice. "The dessert presentation is in 20 minutes. He was quite insistent, the staff member persisted. With a sigh, Emma delegated the final preparations to Mia and followed the attendant through a labyrinth of hallways. She was led to a small private gallery, empty except for a tall figure standing before a massive Renaissance painting. Alexander turned as she entered, and the sight of him in formal attire sent an unwelcome flutter through her chest. 2 weeks away had done nothing to diminish his effect on her. "Emma," he breathed, his eyes taking in every detail of her appearance. "You came." "I'm working," she reminded him, maintaining a professional distance. "My team needs me in the kitchen." "I know, He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as rare vulnerability. "I needed to see you before everything gets chaotic." "You've been gone for 2 weeks," Emma said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. Not a word. Alexander stepped closer. "I tried to call 12 times. I wrote you a note." "I didn't get any note," she said, confusion replacing hurt. "Victoria," he said, understanding dawning. "She must have removed it from the folder." Emma crossed her arms. Convenient explanation. "It's the truth," Alexander insisted. "I've been miserable in Tokyo, thinking of nothing but you. Ask my executive team. I've been impossible to work with." Despite herself, Emma felt her resolve weakening. "What did the note say?" He moved closer still, close enough that she could detect his cologne, sandalwood, and something uniquely him. "It said that none of this is just business anymore, that it hasn't been from the moment I walked into your bakery." Emma's breath caught. "Alexander." "Call me Alex," he interrupted. "Everyone in my world calls me Alexander. My board members, my competitors, the society pages. I want to be someone different with you. Just Alex." The vulnerability in his eyes was her undoing. "What are you saying, Alex?" He reached for her hands, holding them in his larger ones. "I'm saying that these Past weeks have been the most real moments of my life. I'm saying that when I'm with you, I'm not the CEO or the Pierce heir or any of those titles. I'm just a man who can't stop thinking about a woman who treats him like an actual human being. Emma glanced toward the door. What about Victoria? You're bored? Your public image? I don't care, he said fiercely. I ended things with Victoria before I left for Tokyo. She didn't take it well, hence the disappeared note, I imagine. And the rest of it? Emma pressed. Our worlds are completely different, Alex. Then we'll create our own world, he said simply. One where none of that matters. Before she could respond, the door burst open. Mia stood there looking frantic. Emma, we have a situation. One of the ice sculptures is melting and the timing for the presentation is... She stopped, taking in the scene before her. Oh, sorry to interrupt, whatever this is. It's okay, Emma said, reluctantly pulling her hands from Alex's. I'm coming. As she turned to leave, Alex caught her arm. This isn't finished. We need to talk after the presentation. Emma nodded, her mind whirling as she followed Mia back to the kitchen. For the next hour, she functioned on autopilot, directing her team through the grand reveal of their dessert display. The gathered elite of New York society gasped appropriately. Phones raised to capture the edible artwork. From across the room, Emma caught Alex watching her, pride evident in his expression. He stood apart from the crowd, and for a moment, it was as if they were the only two people in the massive space. Then reality intruded in the form of Victoria Winters, resplendent in a crimson gown. She approached Alex, speaking intently. His expression darkened as he listened, occasionally shaking his head. When she placed a hand on his arm, he removed it firmly but discreetly. Emma turned away, focusing on serving the intricate desserts. This wasn't her world, and these weren't her people. The women in designer gowns who complimented her creations looked through her rather than at her. The men in bespoke suits who praised her talent did so with the condescension of those born to privilege. An hour later, as the event was winding down, Emma retreated to a quiet balcony overlooking the museum gardens. The cool night air was a relief after the stifling formality of the ballroom. Your desserts were the highlight of the night. Alex's voice came from behind her. Everyone's talking about them. Emma turned, leaning against the stone balustrade. Mission accomplished, then. He joined her at the railing, loosening his bow tie. That's not why I came looking for you. Why did you, then? She asked, her voice soft in the quiet night. Instead of answering, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times before holding it out to her. Emma took it, confused until she saw what was displayed. A series of deleted draft messages, all addressed to her, spanning the 2 weeks he'd been away. Messages about missing their conversations, about Tokyo sunrises that couldn't compare to her smile, about realizations that had come in the quiet hours of sleepless nights. I wrote them every day, Alex said quietly. I just never sent them because I was afraid. Afraid that what I was feeling wasn't real, or that you didn't feel the same way. Emma handed the phone back, her fingers trembling slightly. I thought, you decided I didn't belong in your world. I don't belong in my world, he confessed. Not the one I've been living in. I built Pierce Innovations because it was expected of me. I date women like Victoria because that's what someone in my position does. I attend these galas and make the right investments and say the right things to the right people, all while feeling like I'm playing a part in someone else's life. He took her hands again, more confidently this time. But with you, in that tiny bakery with mismatched chairs and the smell of cinnamon, I feel like myself for the first time in years. Emma's heart soared, but caution tempered her response. It's easy to say these things here now, but tomorrow you'll go back to being Alexander Pierce, Billionaire CEO, and I'll go back to my bakery in Brooklyn. Then come with me, he said, suddenly. Tomorrow night, to the Hampton charity dinner, as my date, not my caterer. Alex, she hesitated. That would be a statement. The press would have a field day. His blue eyes were earnest in the moonlight. Let them. I'm tired of hiding who I am and what I want for the sake of appearances. Before Emma could respond, the balcony door opened. A security guard approached, looking apologetic. Mr. Pierce, there's an urgent call from Tokyo. The acquisition meeting has been moved up. Alex nodded, never taking his eyes from Emma's face. Tell them I'll be right there. As the guard retreated, he squeezed her hands. Think about it? Please? With that, he was gone, swept back into the world of high finance and higher stakes. Emma remained on the balcony, staring at the place where he had stood, wondering if she had the courage to step into his world, and if he truly had the courage to acknowledge her in it. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a text. From Alex. My driver will take you home whenever you're ready, and Emma, I meant every word, every single one. Pierce aired dating Brooklyn Baker, romance or publicity stunt. The headline screamed from every newsstand in the city. Emma stared at her own face splashed across the New York Post, a grainy photo of her and Alex leaving the Hampton charity dinner together, his hand protectively at the small of her back. She remembered that moment, the flash of cameras, Alex's arm tightening around her, his whispered, "Just keep walking," in her ear. That had been 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks of whirlwind romance conducted in the harsh glare of public scrutiny. 3 weeks of Alex showing up at her tiny apartment with takeout and a bodyguard waiting discreetly outside. 3 weeks of stolen, moments in hidden corners of the city where they could pretend they were just two ordinary people falling in love. Because that's what was happening. Emma was falling hopelessly, irrevocably in love with Alexander Pierce. Not the billionaire CEO whose face graced business magazines, but the man who helped her wash dishes in her cramped kitchen, who had an encyclopedic knowledge of obscure indie films, who woke her with gentle kisses and made love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. You're going to wear a hole in the floor, Mia commented, as Emma paced the bakery kitchen, clutching her phone. Has he called? Not since last night, Emma replied, checking for messages for the 100th time. The previous evening had been their first real fight. Alex had invited her to a board member's daughter's wedding, a highly public event where New York's elite would be watching their every move. I don't belong there, Alex, she had argued in her apartment. Those people look at me like I'm some exotic pet you've decided to domesticate. That's not true, he'd insisted, running a frustrated hand through his hair. And even if it were, who cares what they think? I don't. Easy for you to say. You're not the one being called a social climbing baker in the tabloids. Alex had paled at that. Who said that? I'll have my lawyers. See? Emma had interrupted. That's exactly it. This is your world. You can threaten lawsuits and buy protection from bad press. I can't. I'm just exposed. So what are you saying? He'd asked, voice dangerously quiet. That we should hide? That I should be ashamed to be seen with you? That's not what I meant, and you know it, Emma had replied, tears threatening. I'm saying maybe we rushed into this. Maybe we need to think about what we're doing. Alex had gone very still. I love you, Emma. I've never said that to anyone before. Does that sound like rushing to you? The words had hung in the air between them, his first declaration of love delivered in the middle of an argument. Emma had been too stunned to respond, and Alex had taken her silence as rejection. I need to get some air, he'd said finally, heading for the door. Call me when you figure out if I'm worth the inconvenience. Now, 24 hours later, Emma was beside herself. She'd called and texted repeatedly, but received no response. For someone accustomed to being reachable at all times for business, emergencies, His silence was deliberate and devastating. The bell above the bakery door chimed, and Emma's heart leapt. But it wasn't Alex. It was a courier, delivering an envelope. "Signature required," the young man said, holding out a tablet. Emma signed absently, tearing open the envelope once he'd left. Inside was an invitation to the Pierce Innovations annual shareholder meeting, along with a handwritten note. "He's announcing the new CEO tomorrow. Thought you should know. V. Victoria." Emma stared at the invitation, her mind racing. New CEO? Was Alex stepping down? And why would Victoria, of all people, want her to know? "It's a trap," Mia declared when Emma showed her the invitation. "That woman has been trying to sabotage you from day one." "Or maybe she's telling the truth," Emma countered. "Maybe this is why Alex has gone silent. Maybe he's making major life changes and realized I don't fit into them after all." Before Mia could respond, Emma's phone rang. Not Alex, but a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Williams, this is Judith Reynolds, Mr. Pierce's executive assistant. Mr. Pierce asked me to call regarding your conversation last night." Emma's grip tightened. On the phone. "Is he all right?" "He's been in meetings all day," Judith replied, her tone professionally neutral. "He asked me to tell you that he meant what he said, and that he hopes you'll call him when you're ready to talk." "That's it?" Emma asked, disappointment washing over her. There was a brief hesitation. "Off the record, Ms. Williams, I've worked for Mr. Pierce for 7 years. I've never seen him like this, checking his phone every 5 minutes, distracted in meetings. Whatever happened between you two, he's not taking it well." After hanging up, Emma stared at the invitation again. The shareholder meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next day, just 18 hours away. Whatever Alex was planning, it was happening soon. That night, alone in her apartment, Emma made a decision. She would attend the shareholder meeting. If Alex was truly making life-altering decisions, she needed to know where she stood. The thought of him leaving Pierce Innovations was unthinkable. The company was his legacy, his responsibility. If he was considering such a drastic step because of her, because of their relationship, sleep eluded her as she imagined the scenarios. Would he acknowledge her if she attended? Would Victoria be there, smug in her social victory? Was this all an elaborate scheme to humiliate her publicly? Morning arrived with cruel swiftness. Emma dressed with care, a simple but elegant navy dress that had been a splurge after the success of the gala catering. Her hands trembled as she applied minimal makeup, as she twisted her hair into a neat chignon. The shareholder meeting was being held at the Pierce Tower Auditorium. Emma slipped in quietly, taking a seat in the back row. The room was filled with serious-looking men and women in expensive suits, most significantly older than her. No one paid her any attention, for which she was grateful. On stage, a podium stood empty, flanked by chairs occupied by board members. Victoria sat in the front row, looking triumphant. Emma's stomach clenched. At precisely 10 a.m., a side door opened, and Alex strode in. Emma's breath caught. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his usual confident stride slightly diminished. He took his place at the podium, adjusting the microphone. "Good morning and thank you for coming," he began, his voice steady despite his appearance. "As you know, Pierce Innovations has been undergoing significant changes this quarter. Our acquisition of Meridian Tech is now complete, and our market position has never been stronger." He continued with business updates that meant little to Emma. Her focus was entirely on his face, searching for clues to his emotional state, to his intentions. "Which brings me to the final announcement of today's meeting," Alex said, his tone shifting. "One that concerns the leadership of Pierce Innovations." Emma tensed. This was it. "For the past several months, I've been reevaluating my role as CEO," Alex continued. Not out of dissatisfaction, but out of a desire to create a company that truly reflects my values, not just the values inherited from my father. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Alex's eyes scanned the crowd, then stopped abruptly. He had spotted her. Their gazes locked across the auditorium, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Alex's expression softened imperceptibly. He cleared his throat and continued, never breaking eye contact with Emma. "I will not be stepping down as CEO," he announced, causing another wave of whispers. "But I will be restructuring the company to prioritize ethical innovation and corporate responsibility over mere profit. Those of you who find this direction uncomfortable will be given generous opportunities to divest." Victoria's triumphant expression had morphed into shock. Emma felt a surge of confused relief. He wasn't leaving the company after all. "This restructuring begins with the board," Alex continued. "Effective immediately, I am appointing 3 new members with backgrounds in environmental sustainability, ethical AI development, and community outreach." As Alex continued outlining his vision for the company's future, Emma began to understand. He wasn't choosing between his world and hers. He was transforming his world into something better, something that aligned with the values they shared. "Finally," Alex said, his voice softening, "I want to address the recent speculation about my personal life." Emma froze. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. "Yes, I am in a relationship with Emma Williams, a brilliant businesswoman and chef who has shown me that success isn't measured by market cap or social status, but by authenticity and integrity. Those questioning this relationship are welcome to reconsider their investment in Pierce Innovations, as her values now shape our corporate ethos." Gasps and whispers erupted throughout the auditorium. Victoria stood abruptly and stormed out, followed by several older board members. Alex watched them go without expression. "This meeting is adjourned," he concluded simply. "Thank you for your attention." As the crowd dispersed in a buzz of conversation, Alex stepped down from the stage and made his way directly to Emma, heedless of the stares and whispers that followed him. "You came," he said softly when he reached her. "Victoria sent me the invitation," Emma admitted. "I think she expected a different outcome." A rueful smile touched Alex's lips. "She's had the board in an uproar, convinced I was throwing away my father's legacy. In a way, she did me a favor, forced me to clarify what I really want, both for Pierce Innovations and for myself." He took her hands, oblivious to the remaining shareholders watching them. "I'm sorry about our fight. I shouldn't have walked out. But Emma, I meant what I said. I love you. And I'm not asking you to fit into my world anymore. I'm building a new one. One where we both belong." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, Alex. I was just scared of losing myself in your world, of being a liability to you." "Never," he vowed, cupping her face gently. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. The board, the press, the social circle. They'll adapt or they'll go. I don't care either way." And then he kissed her, right there in the Pierce Tower auditorium, in front of the remaining board members and shareholders. A kiss that promised a future. A kiss that defied convention and expectation. A kiss that felt finally like coming. Nigh 1 year later. "I still can't believe we're doing this," Emma said, surveying the gleaming industrial kitchen that occupied the entire ground floor of what had once been an abandoned warehouse in Dumbo. Sunlight streamed through massive windows, illuminating state-of-the-art equipment and a team of busy pastry chefs. "Having second thoughts?" Alex asked, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. Emma leaned back against his chest, taking in the sight of their shared dream made reality. "Not a chance. Just wondering how we got here so fast." The journey from small Brooklyn bakery to Sugar and Spice Patisserie, now the most sought-after dessert brand in New York, had been a whirlwind. After Alex's public declaration at the shareholder meeting, their relationship had become the subject of intense media fascination. Rather than hiding from the spotlight, they had embraced it on their own terms. Their first joint interview, with Vanity Fair, had turned the narrative from Billionaire's unusual romance to culinary power couple reshaping New York's food scene. When Emma had mentioned her dream of expanding Sugar and Spice beyond the tiny, original location, Alex had offered not his money, but his business expertise. Together, they had developed a business plan that maintained the bakery's artisanal quality while scaling operations. Alex had connected Emma with ethical investors who valued her vision over immediate profits. She had insisted on maintaining majority ownership, a decision Alex had supported wholeheartedly. The Pierce Innovations board meeting starts in an hour, Alex reminded her, checking his watch. Ready for your presentation? Emma nodded, butterflies dancing in her stomach. As part of Pierce Innovations' new community initiative, the company was launching a culinary entrepreneurship program for underprivileged youth. Emma had been appointed to lead the initiative, not as Alex's girlfriend, but as a successful business owner in her own right. Does it ever get easier? She asked as they climbed into the back of the waiting car. Speaking to a room full of board members who still look at me like I'm an interloper? Alex took her hand, running his thumb over the vintage emerald ring he'd placed on her finger 3 months ago. You're not an interloper. You're my fiancé and a brilliant entrepreneur. They respect that, even if some of them still struggle with the changes. The changes at Pierce Innovations had been substantial. After the shareholder meeting, several conservative board members had indeed divested, leading to a brief but dramatic drop in stock prices. Financial news outlets had predicted the company's downfall, attributing Alex's decisions to love-induced insanity, but the restructuring had attracted younger, more progressive investors. The company's new focus on ethical technology and community engagement had positioned it as a pioneer in corporate responsibility. 6 months after the tumultuous shareholder meeting, Pierce Innovations' stock had not only recovered, but reached new heights. Victoria sent her RSVP for the wedding, Emma mentioned as they crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm surprised she's coming. Alex laughed softly. She's dating the CEO of our biggest competitor now, probably coming for corporate espionage. Or to see if I'll trip walking down the aisle, Emma added wryly. The memory of their first planning session for the wedding brought a smile to her face. Her mother, a practical nurse who had raised Emma alone, had been overwhelmed by Alex's suggestion of a ceremony at his family's estate in the Hamptons. Don't you want a big society wedding? Her mother had asked Alex privately, concern evident in her eyes. Something befitting your position? I want whatever makes Emma happy, he had replied sincerely. And frankly, Mrs. Williams, I've attended enough society weddings to last a lifetime. I'd rather have something meaningful. They had compromised on a medium-sized ceremony at the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, with a guest list that included both boardroom executives and Brooklyn bakers. Emma would wear her grandmother's restored wedding dress rather than a designer gown, and they had commissioned Mia to create a dessert display instead of a traditional multi-tiered cake. As the car pulled up to Pierce Tower, Emma straightened, her blazer, a far cry from the flower-covered apron of their first meeting. How do I look? Like the woman who turned my life upside down in the best possible way, Alex replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. Who is about to impress the hell out of my board. The presentation went better than Emma had anticipated. Her practical experience and genuine passion for creating opportunities for young people from backgrounds similar to her own resonated with the board members. Even those who had initially been skeptical of her relationship with Alex were nodding in approval by the end. The program will launch in 3 months, she concluded, with the first class of 20 students selected from applicants across the 5 boroughs. By this time next year, we hope to have helped at least 15 of them establish small businesses in their communities. The applause was genuine, and the questions that followed were engaged and constructive. As the meeting wrapped up, several board members approached Emma personally to express their support. You've certainly proven me wrong, admitted Harold Winters, Victoria's father, and one of the few old guard who had remained on the board. When Alexander first brought you to that charity gala, I thought it was a phase. But what you two have, built together, it's impressive. Thank you, Mr. Winters, Emma replied graciously. That means a lot coming from you. Later, as they walked hand in hand through Central Park, a rare moment of tranquility in their busy lives, Alex pulled Emma onto a secluded bench beneath a blooming cherry tree. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. A pre-wedding gift. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was not jewelry as she had expected, but a key. What's this for? She asked, turning it over in her palm. Our new home, Alex explained, his eyes bright with excitement. It's not a penthouse or a mansion. It's a brownstone in Park Slope, walking distance from the original Sugar and Spice. 4 bedrooms, a garden, and most importantly, a kitchen you're going to love. Emma's eyes widened. But I thought we were looking at apartments in Manhattan, closer to Pierce Tower. Alex shook his head. That was never what you wanted. You light up every time we walk through Brooklyn. It's where you belong, where we belong. Tears welled in Emma's eyes. You'd move to Brooklyn? What about your commute, your social obligations? I bought a helicopter, he deadpanned, then laughed at her expression. Kidding. Though I did consider it. No, I'll take the subway, like a normal person. As for social obligations, we'll handle them together, on our terms. Besides, Pierce Tower isn't going anywhere, and neither is the Manhattan apartment if we need it. Emma launched herself into his arms, nearly knocking him off the bench. I love you, Alex Pierce, even when you're being ridiculous. Especially when I'm being ridiculous, he corrected, holding her close. It's when I'm most authentic, according to you. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching families and couples stroll through the park. The past year had brought challenges they couldn't have anticipated. Paparazzi stalking their dates, business rivals spreading rumors, society matrons snubbing Emma at events. But they had weathered each, stormed together, emerging stronger and more certain of their connection. Do you ever regret it? Emma asked suddenly. Upending your life for me? Changing your company's direction? Scandalizing the Upper East Side? Alex tilted her chin up, looking directly into her eyes. Not for a single second. The man I was before I walked into your bakery wasn't living, Emma. He was performing a role someone else had written for him. You didn't just make me fall in love with you. You made me fall in love with life again. He kissed her softly. Right, there in Central Park, unconcerned with who might see them or what tomorrow's tabloids might say. When they parted, Emma rested her forehead against his. Besides, Alex added with a mischievous smile, scandalizing the Upper East Side has become one of my favorite hobbies. Did I tell you I'm thinking of getting a tattoo? Emma burst into laughter. Now that I'd like to see. Alexander Pierce, billionaire CEO, with a tattoo. The board would have a collective heart attack. I was thinking your name, he mused. Right. Here. He tapped his chest over his heart. Too cheesy? Impossibly cheesy, Emma confirmed, still laughing. I love it. As the afternoon sun bathed them in golden light, they discussed wedding details, honeymoon destinations, and their shared vision for both Sugar and Spice and Pierce Innovations. Their worlds, once so drastically separate, had merged into something entirely new, a life neither of them could have imagined a year ago. That evening, they returned to Emma's small Brooklyn apartment, which Alex had practically moved into despite maintaining his Manhattan penthouse. While he took a conference call with investors in Tokyo, Emma prepared a simple dinner in her tiny kitchen. The domesticity of the scene struck her suddenly. The powerful CEO in sweatpants and a t-shirt, pacing her living room while talking business, pausing occasionally to steal a taste from whatever she was cooking. The way he'd learned to navigate her small space, adapting to a life so different from his own. The genuine joy that lit his face whenever he returned here. to their imperfect but authentic sanctuary. When Alex ended his call, he joined her in the kitchen, washing vegetables, without being asked. "So, future Mrs. Pierce, or is it future Mr. Williams? We never did decide on that." "Williams Pierce," Emma corrected, bumping him playfully with her hip. "Hyphenated, like our lives." Alex nodded approvingly. "Williams Pierce, I like it." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder as she stirred the pasta sauce. "You know, a year ago, if someone had told me I'd be happier in a Brooklyn apartment cooking dinner than in any five-star restaurant or society gala, I'd have thought they were insane. And if someone had told me I'd fall in love with the arrogant suit who insulted my mixer, I'd have laughed in their face," Emma replied, turning in his arms to face him. "Your mixer was from the Stone Age," he defended himself. "It was a safety hazard." "It had character," she countered, tapping his chest. "Like someone else I know, beneath all that corporate polish." Alex caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Thank you for seeing past the suit, Emma Williams." "Thank you for looking beyond the flower and attitude, Alex Pierce." Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of home and promise, of a love that had transcended social barriers and transformed both their lives. A love that had begun with a broken mixer, a black coffee, and two people who had no idea they were about to find everything they never knew they needed. In the background, Emma's ancient radio played softly, filling the apartment with gentle music. And in that perfect ordinary moment, the billionaire and the baker continued writing their extraordinary love story, one that was, at last, no longer hidden. 5 years later, the grand opening of the Sugar and Spice Culinary Academy was front page news. Located in the heart of Brooklyn, the academy would provide free culinary education to underprivileged youth, funded by a partnership between Sugar and Spice Enterprises and the Pierce Foundation. As Emma cut the ceremonial ribbon, Alex stood nearby, their 3-year-old daughter perched on his shoulders. The little girl, Grace, named after Emma's grandmother, clapped enthusiastically, her dark curls and piercing blue eyes a perfect blend of her parents. Mia, now executive chef of Sugar and Spice's flagship restaurant, winked at Emma from the crowd. Nearby stood Judith, who had left Pierce Innovations to become COO of Emma's rapidly expanding business empire. Even Harold Winters was present, having become an unlikely ally and mentor to Emma in navigating the business world. Later, as they celebrated with students, staff, and friends, a reporter approached. "Mrs. Williams Pierce, would you say this is your greatest achievement to date?" Emma glanced at Alex, who was now teaching Grace how to properly pipe, frosting onto a cupcake, his expression one of complete absorption and joy. Their journey had brought them wealth, influence, and opportunities beyond imagination. But their greatest achievement wasn't found in business success or social acceptance. Emma smiled, watching her husband and daughter together. "No," she replied confidently. "My greatest achievement was learning that love doesn't have to be hidden to be real, and that sometimes the most unlikely ingredients create the sweetest results." As if sensing her gaze, Alex looked up and met her eyes across the room. Even after 5 years, that look still sent her heart racing, a mixture of devotion, passion, and gratitude that mirrored her own feelings exactly. He whispered something to Grace, who giggled and nodded enthusiastically. Together they carried a perfectly frosted cupcake over to Emma. "Mommy!" Grace exclaimed, her face alight with pride. "We made this for you. Daddy said it's tradition." Emma accepted the cupcake, noting the familiar swirl of frosting, identical to the very first dessert she had ever served Alexander Pierce. "Your daddy's right," Emma said, kneeling to her daughter's level. "It's how our story began." Alex joined them, completing their little circle. "And the best part," he added softly, for Emma's ears only, is that our story is just getting started. As Grace started off to join the other children, Alex pulled Emma close, unconcerned with the cameras or the crowd. In his arms, in front of everyone, was exactly where she belonged. "I love you, Emma Williams Pierce," he murmured against her hair. "Best decision I ever made was walking into that bakery." "I love you too, Alexander Pierce Williams," she teased. "Best decision I ever made was not poisoning your coffee." His laughter rumbled against her, warm and real and perfect. And as they turned to face their future together, a future neither of them could have imagined that first morning among broken mixers and spilled flour, Emma knew with absolute certainty that some love stories weren't meant to be hidden. Some were meant to be headlines. Then